He was off. He had something to do today. He'll be back tomorrow.
Okay.
And we'll have
Yes,
Russ.
thank you.
We'll have Russ Cohen tomorrow too.
Yeah, we'll have Russ tomorrow. Excellent. Awesome. And that sounds really good. Much hockey this weekend. You guys have helped me. Hate to say it, but I was feeling under the weather, and I slept about 24 of the last 24 hours, just about. But I got some things. I do have some fun things to talk about, though. All right, let's begin. Here we go. It is March 23rd.
He was off. He had something to do today. Whoop, hold on a second.
That would be you.
I gotta shut the browser. We'll have Russ Cohen tomorrow too. Sorry.
We'll have Russ tomorrow. Excellent.
I'm doing my Ack imitation. I had the browser open.
Wow. Taking a shot at me for no reason. All right.
Ready to go?
There's always plenty of reasons to take shots at me. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. How you doing? It's Monday, March 23rd, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and welcome back to the HockeyBuzzCast. We only have a couple weeks to go in this regular season. This is the podcast, that comes to you both in English and Canadian, Monday through Friday. And we bring you all the latest hockey news, and we try to keep you on top of things. And my goodness, before we start anywhere, a rumor flying around right now that it's a lot of fun to talk about. And this is totally off topic of everything else, but Ilya Kovalchuk perhaps returning to the NHL, not after this season, but not next season, but after next season is the rumor. So I know we have a good 18 months to discuss this, but I still think that it's what would happen, Kevin, if Ilya Kovalchuk came back? I mean, how would they handle this? I mean, that's been the wonder I've wondered all along,
Well, I mean, is it supposed to be a free agent? So
he's totally a free agent. New Jersey has no rights to him at all.
Well, saying that, like, it seems to me now, I actually have to go look this up, but it seems to me they were going to hold his rights for some period, and then he would become a unrestricted free agent. I think we're going to have to just sort of research that because, this is really sort of unprecedented. I don't remember anything like this, obviously, because he walked away from his contract and it was null and void. And I mean, there's obviously going to have to be a ruling on it.
I mean, how much money did he walk away from again? I was trying to remember.
Oh, I can't. We'd have to look it up. Maybe Mike can look it up while we talk about it. But
the deal was $100 million, and he was 3 years into it. It was 15 years, so probably around $85 million.
I mean, this is precedent setting for sure. Of course, you don't want one of those rules you need to make when when a person walks. How many players are going to ever walk away from an $80 million contract? But
no. Well, that's always the interesting aspect of these things. Like, people are always so upset. Like, why isn't there a rule in place? Because you can't. There's a reason is you can't anticipate every goofy thing that's going to happen. And I mean, who would have thought that anybody would walk away from a contract? So.
Yeah. According to the article that was posted in the Hockey News, there's $77 million remaining on the 12 years, and according to this, if he was to come back at the beginning of the 2016-2017 season, he would have to receive the green light from every team in the NHL because he voluntarily retired, and if he didn't get that, he wouldn't be able to come back to the NHL until the completion of his KHL contract, which is not until 2018.
Okay, all right. And then what did they ascertain? Is he a free agent or is he with the Devils then?
It doesn't say, but from what I would believe he's an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But I didn't want to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little bit unfair to the Devils that he's an unrestricted free agent, but
he chose to walk away. And they benefited from, the lack of, they didn't owe him that money. So
yeah, they took a cap hit of, it's like minuscule. It's like less than $1 million. So I mean, they benefited in that sense. I mean, they're not spending it on anything right now because the Devils are going to have, I believe it's 8 unrestricted free agents at the end of this year, and may have the most cap room next to Buffalo and Arizona in the NHL next season. So they really haven't spent the money that they were freed up by Kovalchuk going to St. Petersburg. But I mean, the question is, I mean, I don't know if I can see all 30 NHL teams giving the green light to this, because what if there's one NHL team, like say the LA Kings want to sign Ilya Kovalchuk, you think Anaheim is going to say, oh sure, come back to the league? I think there'd be one team that would probably try to block it.
I would agree with that. I just think, as a matter of course, if you're a team, he's not going to go to the, let's just say he's like most NHL players and he doesn't want to play in, Edmonton or Calgary or Toronto, or, he doesn't want to go to Arizona if they're still poor at that point. Somebody's going to block it. I mean, why do you want your opposition to get it? So
no,
this makes sense.
I think it's. I have heard, though. I mean, this is one thing I will say, is that I actually heard he loved it in New Jersey. That he really enjoyed it. He enjoyed the area. He liked being part of New York, but not being part of New York. It was one of those things, that, and people don't realize how much a lot of players do love it in New Jersey. It's one of those teams that I don't think gets enough credit for the situation it's in. It not only has had a pretty good winning tradition for all these years, and Lou Lamoriello really treats his people well. But yeah, this is he liked it in New Jersey, so I wouldn't be shocked if New Jersey were to bring him back, despite all that's happened.
Yeah, and I mean that does make sense, but again, it's would the Rangers or would the Islanders just say, oh yeah, Ilya, come back, come back to New York, come back to the New York area? I don't know, I don't think so. I mean, unless there's an opportunity here. I mean, the league, I'm sure, is monitoring the financial situation of the KHL right now. There's supposedly 4 teams that are going to fold at the end of the season. One of them being the team that's in Ukraine. The Russian ruble is going down as steeply as the Canadian dollar is. If that league becomes destabilized and starts, a lot of players like Radulov or Kovalchuk become available, I mean, it's a no-lose for the NHL, because you got an influx of talent, and it just makes the NHL a better league if these players want to come back to the NHL. So maybe circumstances will change things to allow a Kovalchuk and other players to come to the NHL.
Yeah, I think that's very likely.
Well, I agree with that, and it's interesting. But if the KHL didn't exist, like last time I looked, I think there were 28 Russians in the league. Like, if it was the natural process, like, how many Russians would be in the NHL? 70? 65? 60? I mean, they're obviously
what the Russian fall is about. Like, this is definitely a story. You probably have read.
Well, it's mostly about the KHL. I mean, let's look at it from a Russian player's perspective.
Right.
Yeah, if you're not a premium player, but you're a good player, you can stay over there and earn the same money. You don't have to go through entry-level contracts, and you're playing in front of friends and family. You don't have the horrendous travel of an NHL season or the grind of an NHL season. So there's a lot of attraction to playing in the KHL, and when you're over there too, like, the KHL is big news.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have big crowds, you don't have the giant arenas like we have in the NHL, but it's covered like it's a major event. So it's a high profile. You're a star. You're treated like a star, and
it's probably right behind soccer, right? It's right behind soccer.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an attraction. So let's just say there's 1 or 2 players on every team that could play at the NHL level. I would think it would at least double the size if the KHL didn't exist.
Sure.
But the KHL is always going to exist in some form.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder this because what I always wondered about was this. I always felt like the drop of Russian players in the NHL had to have something to do with the Russian economy dropping down too. Like in the past, in the past 30 years. Or say the past 20, 25 years, the development of players, and when these players would be developing, there have been ranks closing left and right in Russia. It's been really difficult to keep things going. I always felt like that had to be some of it. That beyond, because when you watch the team, the Russian Olympic team play, how many of those Russian Olympians do you think belong in the NHL? That were the KHL guys who weren't already in the NHL. The ones that they took. How many of those guys? I mean, I only saw a couple that I thought could play in the NHL. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Well, by memory, I think say I think it was like 35 to 40% of that Russian Olympic team roster was KHL players. I
right.
mean,
And
including
some
Radulov.
said that was inflated by the fact they wanted to have that many KHL players.
Right. Right. Now, that being said, I think some of them would make the NHL. There's no way of knowing how many. I mean, the thing is that, I mean, yeah, I think it's economic, but at this point, if these teams, like if the league shrinks, if the KHL shrinks, you're talking, if it's say 4 teams, that's 80 jobs. Just like the contraction in the NHL would make the league
Oh
stronger.
yeah, there'll be players that come over here, but I mean, remember communism was actually good for Russian hockey too, compared to this. I mean, they actually did.
Low. They kept prices really low.
Well, but you know what I mean. Russian hockey. I mean, they really spent a lot more time developing. I mean, there was a lot more emphasis on developing.
Well, they don't. The KHL really doesn't have the attendance to support the salaries they pay. I mean, almost all the teams are propped up by, either government assistance or, a deep pockets owner who, there are a lot of the 1% over in Russia, exists there as well, and most of those guys don't seem to own the KHL teams. So so if suddenly you had to start living within your means, it would change everything. I mean, if Russian players didn't have, they used to come over here because the money was over here.
Right. Grab that. You want to?
Let me.
We'll continue our discussion.
I gotta get this.
Okay,
Mute me, please.
Mute you and continue our discussion.
Okay. Well, no, and let me just extend on that point. Most of the ownership in the KHL are oil billionaire oligarchs who are, and that's the problem with the oil prices going down right now.
Right. That's awesome.
With the relations between the U.S. and Russia right now, and being antagonistic over the geopolitical situation, it's not a atmosphere conducive to their business thriving. Now, what I was going to say to Kevin when he was talking about how many players, and you were talking about how many players would come over here. I mean, one of the I think the side effects of the KHL is, in a way, they've become a feeder system for the NHL for certain players. I know that the Maple Leafs just signed a 21-year-old kid from one of the Moscow-based KHL teams who was a free agent. His contract was up. He was undrafted. They went out, they scouted him, they signed him. And now he could have fallen through the cracks, or he could have, been playing with some club team in Finland or Sweden or something like that if the KHL wasn't there. But now, because he was a free agent and he was on their radar, they signed him, they bring him over, he plays in the American Hockey League, maybe makes the NHL in a couple of years, and he's a 22 or 23-year-old kid at that point. It's like a free draft pick. So, I mean, that is the benefit of the KHL, but the problem is that they are they've been keeping some of those Russian players who I think would be helping the NHL, like Sabatka and Radulov and Kovalchuk. And those guys would make an impact in the NHL.
Yeah, I think if you're going to talk about KHL players that could be playing in the NHL, you're talking about more non-Russian KHL players that could perhaps be back in the NHL. There's
a lot of Finns in the
right, right, and there are. And then another thing that Kevin mentioned, it is easier to play over there. The other thing is the cultural differences are vast between America and Russia, and I've talked to people about this before, and even Czech players, even when the Czech Republic, even when it was Czechoslovakia, it was guys like Jágr and players like that. I remember Josef, I think it was Baranek, or these guys would go back home all the time because they did miss their culture so much. It's a big difference. But North America, where Sweden is very North American like. Finland is very North American like. Finland is a little bit more. Finland is literally between Sweden and and Russia, literally, where it sits, and culturally. Where the Finns their parts of their culture is more Russian, parts of their culture is more North American or Swedish. So,
well, I remember when Hasek was in Buffalo, he used to go back to the Czech Republic every year. The thing is that and one of the aspects, and this was only like secondhand that I heard this, was one of the aspects that he was concerned about was the fact that his kids were growing up in North America, and they were used to the North American lifestyle. So he was going back to the Czech Republic.
Yep.
But the thing was, they ended up, and I think he's still over here. I don't know if he's living in the Czech Republic.
I don't know. Kevin would know that answer.
Yeah, but I mean, I know that was a big concern for him, and that I had heard that his kids couldn't stand it back there because compared to North America, there's all the creature comforts of video games and things like that. And I don't know. Now I'm sure all that stuff is over there as well. But I don't know where he ended up. But with him and with Thomas Caberlet, who was with Toronto, he would go back to the Czech Republic to Kladno every summer and then come back for the season. It was more I have to be here for work, but then I have to go back home.
Very true, and especially with kids. And I've seen this with other players too. I've seen this with a Finnish player that I know very well, who is terrified of his kids being in the school systems in America because of guns. And I know that sounds incredibly, what are the chances or what have you of our kids, but at the same time, there haven't been any shootings in school systems in Finland. Things like that are very real. They're very real, and people, especially with their kids, especially in Russians, quite often their kids are afraid that they're going to become too Americanized. And not that they see America as wrong or bad, but just that they see it as different. They're raised in different ways. Some of them will be the first to say that they love it here, but they think it's better for an adult than it is for kids. I've seen this a lot, yeah, and it isn't something that's not mentioned very often, but I think that it's important to mention. So that will be interesting to watch Kovalchuk. I have to stop saying interesting. I got to get my bell back. We'll be back with we'll hear more about Kovalchuk. I mean, I heard Kovalchuk wanted to come back to New Jersey almost instantly after the decision. That it was that he had a second doubt, so when he couldn't come back, and I know I'm not surprised. I do believe Kovalchuk returns to the NHL someday. I think that this is a given. I'm almost surprised that it's not after this season. I guess there's some contractual reason that he can't, but. There was a contractual reason he couldn't leave. Maybe it's hard to get out of your contract in Russia. You don't want to do it as much as you want to do it here in the U.S.
Right.
Let's talk about the standings a little bit because look out, Boston. Ottawa's on the rampage, having won 6 in a row. Now the Ottawa Senators sit 1 point behind the Bruins with 2 games at hand.
Yeah.
Only 5 points behind the Capitals with 2 games at hand. The Sens are really are pouring it on here. It almost feels inevitable that the Sens are going to catch these teams. They've been going like this has been going like this for such a long time now. The Senators are 9-1 in their last 10. Mm-hmm. It's remarkable. They haven't yet caught them, but this is the week they might. I mean, it really feels as if they could now.
Well, I mean, Boston didn't do themselves any favor with they lost 1 game against the Panthers in a shootout, and then lost to Tampa Bay yesterday. They're just not playing the way they need to play. I mean, after having that long winning streak that they had a couple weeks ago and into last week, they sort of slowed down, and now they've lost 3 games in a row with the loss in Ottawa and now the 2 games in Florida. Ottawa. I mean, don't get me wrong. They played fairly well against Toronto and they beat the Leafs 5-3, but the Leafs weren't. They haven't been trying for almost 3 months, and the game was tied 3-3, and Dave Cameron had to yell and scream at his team to wake up, and that they were giving the puck away to a team that really wasn't showing a ton of effort. I mean, the bottom 6 forwards for Toronto were, but their big guns were not. And then Ottawa scored a goal in the last minute of the second period, and then scored I believe it was an empty net goal to win the game. To lock away the victory. So yeah, I mean, right now, Ottawa and Andrew Hammond did not play fantastic against Toronto. It's the 2nd game in a row that he's appeared to be a mere mortal. So
winning.
Yeah. So how long can that last? It's a nice story, and the hamburgers being thrown on the ice is funny, but they ran a promotion on Saturday in Ottawa that if the Senators won, I believe, the ticket was good for a free hamburger at McDonald's. Because of the Hamburglar thing.
Right.
And it's just, they're whipping up the media and the marketing thing for Hammond where the main concern should be, catching Boston in the standings. So they're just lumping everything together because this season hasn't been overly exciting for the Sens, but in the last 15 games they've really just turned it on, and
It has now.
yeah, and now the pressure is squarely on the Bruins. They didn't bring Krejci back. I believe he's scheduled to come back this week, and if he does, maybe that's the thing that turns them around. But right now, they're feeling the pressure.
I still think the Capitals are the team to look out for here, and I know everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I still think the Caps are the team, Kev. I mean, I think that the Caps are only 5 points ahead of the Sens now. They've got 3 games. I mean, they've got 2 games at hand. I mean, I think the Sens are getting in. It's whether or not they knock Boston or Washington out. That's my opinion.
Well, until Detroit beat the Blues yesterday in an important game, like I thought it was possible that the Red Wings could be coming down to them. I mean, they had a tough run there for a while. That was a huge win over the Blues by them. And Howard played well the last 2 games. But I agree. I mean, I'm not one who believes that team can come from way behind in the end. But what the Senators were able to do is get out from under the collection of teams that were down in the bottom, and now they're just looking straight up at the Bruins. And as you said, Washington, and to a lesser extent now the Red Wings. I think they're a point behind the Bruins, and then 5 or 6 behind the Red Wings. In that division, and then as you said, Washington is there. I kind of think the Capitals are going to hold on. I think if the Senators are going to do it, they're going to have to beat the Bruins. But the Bruins now look vulnerable again, or maybe the Senators look too hot. That's the main thing. I mean, is there anybody playing better than the Senators right now?
No,
I don't think so.
Maybe the Rangers are right there, but they're not.
Yeah.
But I'd say the Sens. I mean, the Sens, considering what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I always believe when you're trying to figure out who's going to make the playoffs at the end of the day, you look at the goal differentials too, because it does seem to matter, And then when you go down the whole list, all the teams that are in the playoffs right now in the East, are positive goal differentials, with the exception of the Senators who are also positive, but they're plus 19, and the Bruins are plus 3 on the year. So the Sens have a much better goal differential. The Bruins are just barely hanging above even there, and then you drop to Florida as a minus 20, so there's a big drop off right there.
Well,
I mean the Senators are better, goal differential is better than the Red Wings. And the goal differential is so important because I was just looking at the power play opportunities, and power play opportunities are down significantly this season. Like if you're going to win now in the NHL this season, you got to win 5-on-5. Because the power play chances just aren't coming. There's just not as many as there used to be per game. For whatever reason, either guys have figured it out or the refs aren't calling. You can decide that on your own. But I saw some numbers that as of, I think it was first week in March, like power play numbers were down, from last season, and from like 3 years ago, they were down almost a penalty per game, or power play chance per game. Well, that's fairly significant over a season. So 5-on-5 has become increasingly more important, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. That's been a major thing. And now, when you look at the schedule the rest of the way out between Washington, Boston, and Ottawa, beyond Ottawa having just 2 more games, and this is where Detroit still has I think is fine, because Detroit is at that 71 game point as well. They've got the same amount of games that Ottawa has left, so they've got 2 games to handle Washington and Boston, even though they are only slightly ahead of Washington. But yeah, when you look at the schedule, Ottawa's got a really favorable schedule. Boston's got a really difficult schedule. And this week, for example, like Boston's next 2 games are Anaheim and the Rangers. That's not something you want to. I mean, they're battling for their lives here, and they've got to go up against Anaheim and the New York Rangers, the 2 top teams in the league. That's crazy. 2 of the top teams at least.
And I believe. I mean, I know the Senators play Toronto twice. I believe they still play Buffalo one more time. So that of their block of games, 25% of them is against teams at the bottom of the league who have basically checked out. So I mean that's going to be an advantage for them. I mean, any semblance of the thought that Toronto was going to try against Ottawa because it's the Battle of Ontario and there's a rivalry. I didn't see any signs of that. I think you saw signs of players playing for their jobs, and that's a normal thing to see at the end of the season. But I didn't see like Toronto getting all excited at the prospect of being the Ottawa Senators. And I think that's a distinct advantage for Ottawa. It's just a question of how long can they keep this up. I mean, I like some of the players. You have young guys like Zibanejad and Hoffman who are having really good years. They have a balanced scoring attack. They're doing this without Clark MacArthur, one of their better forwards. Turris is scoring. He scored 2 goals against Toronto on Saturday. So they're getting offense from a number of places. It's just a question of how long can they keep this up, because I don't think no team can keep up a 900 winning percentage for long.
Right. There comes a point at which that they have to come back to reality. The question is, do they catch Boston before that point? Because now they got a chance.
The reason why I think they can is to me, when the Senators are going well, Carlson is carrying the flag. And he is really carrying the flag for this team now. Hammond certainly has been, the story. But how long ago we looked in the stats and you saw Carlson as a minus player, and now he's leading the defenseman in scoring again, and he's a plus player. And I don't know exactly what his stats are. I'll look them up here in a second.
He's making that late push for the Norris, though.
Yeah, he is. I don't think he's going to get there, but he is making a late appearance. But he has. I think the last time I looked, he was almost at about a point per game, pace over an extended period of time. And when he's moving up the ice and being the impact offensive catalyst that he can be, the Senators are a different team. There's no question about that. And they've managed to overcome. I remember we talked about the loss of Spezza. When he left there, wow, it's going to be hard for them to recover. Well, they have found guys that have stepped in. Martin Stone and Huffman, and some of the younger players have stepped up, and Turris has been an effective player as we expected him to be. But to me, their defense has been much better than I thought it would be this season.
Absolutely, same here for sure. Now in the West too, it's also gotten more intriguing. Mike?
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny thing is, and I heard a few commentators talk about this, is that the teams that everybody's assuming would make the playoffs, would sneak in the East was Boston, and in the West was the LA Kings. And right now, if you had to make a bet, it's a 50-50 proposition whether those teams make it or not. I mean, maybe less than 50-50 in the case of Boston, but I mean, LA, they lost to Vancouver on the weekend. Tyler Toffoli may be suspended. I haven't heard yet whether there is going to be a hearing with the NHL for the hit that he made on Burrows on Saturday. So if I haven't heard anything by now, probably it's not going to happen. But they're just not playing that type of hockey down the stretch that they were playing a little earlier on. And you've got Calgary and Winnipeg and Minnesota. They're all winning. San Jose seems to have checked out. But still, and it's very possible that LA is going to be on the outside looking in.
Oh, it is. It is. And at this point, Winnipeg now, Pavlich is the player of the week, got the first star of the week this year in the NHL. This week in the NHL, Pavlich is and now this goes on. I mean, their other goalie got the player of the week earlier in the season. I was trying to remember. I don't know if there's been a time when 2 goalies on the same team won player of the week at some point during the season, but that's what's actually been happening here in Winnipeg. Is their goaltending has been so good. They just keep shocking everybody. They keep surprising everybody. They keep winning. 4 in a row now, and Winnipeg's got a lot going on for them.
I mean, right now, go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that the thing about the Jets is, this is their 4th season, and they have such an ardent, rabid fan base that, this is such an exciting period, and I think they're really sort of feeding off that. It really is a frenzy in Winnipeg. And I was talking to Kevin Cheveldayoff, the GM, about this, and he said he's happiest mostly for the fans, just because they want this playoff race, and it's kind of frustrating for them because they've actually played remarkably well given their adversity. They had I've joked about it before. They had the JV defense playing for for a couple of weeks there when everybody was banged up. Big Bufflin has been out of commission, and they still have kind of hung in there. And their goaltending was great early. They had a soft spot, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now it's back playing well again. Whatever seems to come their way, they've handled it. And Cheveldayoff, who was really sort of under fire from fans for not being aggressive, has really been bold this season. And he made the Myers trade, the big trade, and Toulouse and has pulled all the levers he can to make this team better. And everybody has responded. It's really an exciting period for the Jets. And they have the smallest arena in the league, but they play to like more than 100% capacity. And this goes back to when they first got the team. We all remember they sold out the season in 17 minutes, which I don't know if there are records for such things, but sounds like a record. If you sell out the season,
much better than that.
Minutes.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I think this is just a fun time, and I think they're feeding off that, and everybody's excited. And what you're hopeful, if you're Paul Maurice, is that this team, which has played pretty darn well here down the stretch, doesn't see this as their Stanley Cup. Like if you get into the playoffs, you want to keep rolling. And it feels like one of those things where once they make the playoffs, that'll be their that'll be it. Right. That'll be their accomplishment. So.
Well, it's funny because they really benefited from Tyler Myers coming back. There was a question whether he was going to be out as long as Bufflin has turned out to be, but he did come back and he played 24 minutes in their victory over Washington over the weekend. So him and guys like Tobias Enstrom and Trouba are all playing over 20 minutes, sort of picking up the slack for Bufflin, who I think was more effective for them on the blue line than he was at forward. But if you look at the standings right now, LA's got 82 points. I think they're going to have an easier chance making third in the Pacific than they are making the wild card, because Calgary is only 2 points ahead of them, and they have a game in hand on Calgary. But Winnipeg is 4 points ahead, and Minnesota is 5 points ahead, and they play Toronto tonight, which is probably a guaranteed victory. So it's going to be tough for the Kings. They're going to, in these final 11 games, I think they're probably going to have to go 8-3. Or 7-4-1 or 7-3-1, something like that, to make the playoffs.
Which they can do, but think about it. We've always said all year long that if LA makes the playoffs, they're the favorite. They're still going to be. Is that still true? It's starting to not be true in my head that this LA Kings team is not the favorite in the playoffs. That they are not suddenly going to be. They could make the playoffs still, and they could beat Vancouver in the first round of a playoff series. I could see that, but beyond that, I don't know. This team doesn't have it all going on. I think that there's too many good teams in the West. I don't feel like that's still true. Kevin, your thoughts?
Well, I know what you're saying, and I think I think that's true. I think we expected here by now for the Kings to start to look like the Kings. Like the Bruins went through the period where they remembered, we're still the Bruins. Even though we lost to Ginla, Thornton, and Boychuk. We still have Claude Julien telling us, how to play, and we still know how to play the Bruins style. And I think we expected the Kings to, at some point, to go, hey, we're still the Kings. We won 2 of the last 3 Stanley Cup championships. We grow good beards in the playoffs. We play hard in the playoffs, and we're going to go do it. Well, they really haven't done that. And now it is in doubt. And so I think what we were saying is they, if they could get in the playoffs, they could win the playoffs. And I think that's still true. I don't know that I would say they're one of the favorites, but they're a team built for the postseason. So I think most of us believe that the playoff pool now, that it's not 4 or 5 teams that could win the cup. It's 11 or 12 that can win the cup. And I think they would be in that group if they get in. To me, I guess you can argue that it's I think it's 4 teams trying to get 3 spots, and I think Mike's right. The Kings could get in and steal Calgary's number 3 spot and knock Calgary down, and they can compete with the Jets. Like, the Jets aren't in safe. Everybody looks good. They got a 4-point lead, but they're only 2 points behind Calgary, so it's really kind of complicated. And even though the Jets have won a bunch of games in a row, they're not clearly in either. If I had to say a team that's going to be out, I'd say it's the Kings, right now, but because of the schedule and everything, but who knows?
Yeah, Calgary has a very easy schedule the rest of the way, which is the easiest. A
lot of home games.
Yeah, the easiest of any team out west, for sure. So yeah, it's just going to be, and this is going to be again, a huge week to determine this. we're really getting down to nitty gritty now, and man.
And the one factor about the Kings too, just when we often talk about the hunger of trying to win a cup. You need to maintain that hunger. And have we seen that from the Kings this season? It seems like they seem full.
They seem exhausted. I mean, that when you talk to people out there, they say they're a tired team from all the playoff runs and the Olympic players, because they had a ton of Olympians on that team. That they really look tired, and I mean that seems to be where it's at right now.
Speaking of that too, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but it connects. I was looking at some of the enhanced stats on the website, and I was looking up Crosby. I did a little quick Crosby column on, all the speculation about his inferior season, and here we are with less than 3 weeks to go, and he's leading the league in scoring again. And I was looking at enhanced stats, and I saw that he was ranked 23rd in the shots attempted versus shots against during the periods he's on the ice, and and while I was there, I was stunned to discover that who's leading in that category, and it isn't surprising, but I think it speaks to why a lot of people believe that he doesn't get as much attention as he should for the Norris Trophy, and that's Drew Doughty. I mean, and he's the Kings just get tons and tons of shots when he's on the ice, and they don't give up any. He is just such a forceful player, and we all have our opinions on the value of enhanced stat, but when you look at the stats and see his his rating, it really brings home how important he is to that team, and how maybe we're undervaluing his Norris candidacy.
I think so too, especially, and I think he might have trouble with it too, is because of the fact that the Kings haven't been all that great. I think that could play against him as well.
Right.
But this might be as good a season as he's ever had. So that's a tough. And honestly, it is, because if he wasn't there, the Kings wouldn't even be talking about the playoffs. I mean, there's no way.
Whereas a guy like Weber, with Nashville having as good a season as they are having right now, I think it elevates his candidacy, because I mean, I don't think he's having the best year that he's ever had, but they are having the best year that they are having with him having a good year, which and he's in a sense sort of paid his dues, and that seems to be what happens with the Norris Trophy. You get nominated, you're part of the mix, and it takes a little while for you to rise up to the top, and then when you actually win it, sometimes you're even past the apex of your career, but you win it on reputation, and I would think Weber's probably going to win it this year based on that.
I wish I didn't agree with Mike, but I agree completely.
Yeah.
I think we should be voting on the basis of what is happening this year, but I do think that influences us. Like even a guy like myself to believe strongly it should just be about this season. It does feel to me that Shea Weber is overdue. That and like it feels like Ty should go to Shea Weber, because he's been runner-up and everything else. So
I agree, and the Preds have had a great season. I mean, they've struggled lately, but they still have had a great season. And who knows what the playoffs will bring.
The problem is you can run into pro scouts who will tell you that Yossi's been even better than Weber this year.
Yeah.
That always troubles me when I start to think like that, because I know Yossi's great, but
yeah, right.
It just because I try. I think we all want to do the right thing, and for me the right thing is give it to the guy who deserves it this season. But all these factors, we're human, so all these other factors do come in. So when I have pro scouts telling me, Weber's really good, but Yossi's been better. Well, then I say, well, how can he win the Norris if a guy on his team has been better than he has? Now, there are some intangibles that are hard to measure. Like he's such an intimidating presence. His leadership, he's obviously the leader of the team, where Yossi, doesn't face that same amount of pressure. So, we all get by with a few juicy rationalizations every day. Maybe that's mine.
No, I completely agree, and we don't get there. They don't have really lifetime achievement awards, for hockey players. I always thought, Niedermayer, Scott Niedermayer was the best defenseman for a decade, in my opinion. And he won some awards in there too. But I wish, somehow you could have said that this is the best defenseman for a decade. if you were to take all those, like, we should give a Norris out for the 80s, a Norris out for the 90s, a Norris, that kind of thing, and just have like a whole decade worth of stuff, because
it seems like a very baseball thing to do, Kevin, because it's like, you remember, like, Ozzie Smith won Gold Glove at shortstop and Derek Jeter won the Gold Glove at shortstop when most people said that their defensive abilities were declining.
Yeah.
They won it on reputation. And
I'm not sure that I mean, you're probably right. It is reputation, but it almost feels like the group decided we got to honor them. We got to honor them somehow because they didn't really get screwed, but it didn't work out for them. They were unfortunate, and I think that's what ends up happening. And they people look at that and then they vote accordingly, and it's again it's just so the human element of voting is what makes it so kind of fascinating. Speaking of lifetime trophies, like it's flabbergasting that Nicholas Lidstrom never won the Masterton for perseverance. This guy just played every game, hardly ever missed a game, was so efficient. Like, he should get a lifetime Masterton award.
We need lifetime awards.
Like Chris Chelios. I've been campaigning for Jaromir Jagr to win the Masterton for like 3 seasons. Like, how can he not win? Like, he's sort of like the definition of the award.
Right.
Perseverance. Like, Jagr loves to come to the rink. He loves to play.
Yeah.
Nick Lidstrom loves to play. They played forever. Chelios played till he was 46. It's just amazing those guys have not won an award. The problem is the Masterton, even though it shouldn't be comeback player of the year, it's evolved into that, and the diseases get mixed up in it, and it gets complicated. But it shouldn't be given to the player who comes back from the most difficult disease. It's about
that should be his own award, the disease award.
Well, there should be a comeback player of the year, and that player then would be the injury illness award, and the Masterton would be about what it's about, which is to reward guys who show great passion and love of the game and perseverance and play for a lengthy period of time, like Daniel Alfredson. Alfredson would have been a good Masterton.
I like that. I like that idea a lot. Maybe we need our own Hockey Buzz awards at the end of the year that we can define our own awards, like in the way we think they should be defined. I like that idea. Maybe we should think about that one.
Well, there's a Swedish magazine that gives out its own version of Player of the Year and all that kind of stuff, and the guy from Sweden comes over and presents it, and we do it upright. So
we should do it. Yeah. Now
we do that. It could be the Hockey Buzz Award.
Yeah, the Hockey Buzz Awards. I like it. The Buzz Awards. Here the now there's a little Stanley Cup trivia for you. How many bands are there on the Stanley Cup? Anyone know?
Oh, jeez.
All right, throwing you out there. You wrote a Stanley Cup book. Yeah. So I just thought I would call you on the carpet on this one. All right, so there are. I didn't know this at all.
I don't know.
I didn't know this. There are apparently. Okay, when I was checking this out today. All right, let me see. I have it right here. There are 5 main bands. Where their recent names are engraved, and then there's 6 bands at the top with historic names that run from like 1893 to 1927. So there's 11 bands altogether. The 5 bands run, from present day back as far as they can. So, and a ring holds 13 Cup winners around it. So, hey, basically, what all this means is that after the 2016-17 season, which is not this season, of course, but next season, they will fill up that bottom. They will have to go to a new ring because this is the last. They're filling up the last ring this year. A new ring, and the ring that will be removed will remove Gordie Howe and Rocket Richard from the Stanley Cup.
Wow!
Isn't that something? Because that basically at this point how it works is all teams up into and including the 1966 Montreal Canadiens will be removed. So Richard last won in 60, Howe won in 55.
Yeah.
I think that I would like there to be, I don't know. Seems completely out there maybe, but we do have those top bands, 5, all those other bands, and I think it's great that we show historical bands that go way back, but we need an all-time thing. Like, we need something for teams that have won it multiple times. We need, like a couple bands that say, okay, this is, and then just say it like, the list.
A dynasty band. A dynasty band.
A dynasty band, where things like Gordie Howe and Rocket Richard wouldn't be taken off the Stanley names like that, because those names should be on the Stanley Cup. Just my thought.
I like the logic of it, but I also like I'm sure the ceremony of the retirement of the band will be, and it'll be preserved in the vault there where the cup is given. I mean, they'll still be honored. People are going to now go visit the band. Like the real cup isn't there all that often,
Right.
in the Hall of Fame, because it's on tour and it's with the players and all that. And you see the replica cup, but you're always going to see that band now when you go up. So, I think that will be revered. I mean, you go in that vault now, and you're going to see, you're going to see the names of Howe and Rocket Richard. You're going to feel like you saw something. So
that's true. That's true.
It's
definitely a bonus for the Hockey Hall of Fame.
The cup is symbolic of the evolution of the game and the history of the game, and I think it should reflect that. I mean, the funny thing is, last week I heard Dick Irvin interviewed on a Toronto radio station talking about it was the 60th anniversary of the riot that after Rocket Richard was suspended by Clarence Campbell. I mean, it was 1955. And Rocket only won a few more cups after that. It was 60 years ago. So I mean, he's been on that cup for over half a century. So I think it's not to me. It's like, I mean, I'm a historian. I'm somebody who appreciates the greats of the past, and they shouldn't be forgotten. But I think that the cup should reflect the evolution of the game as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, and there are some saying that soon, I guess, I think there's 3 or 4 retired bands now. This will be the 4th retired band, and that, perhaps they should make a retired band cup, that just sits there, because they can put the bands together. They're soon going to have enough bands to make another cup out of them.
Wait a second, Nick. The retired band cup is those are the bands that are coming in the summer to Western New York, like Deep Purple and Cheap Trick. That's the retired band cup.
But I like Kevin's idea too. I like the fact that these things are just on a wall on display. That's pretty cool. So I just thought that was interesting. Those guys. I mean, that's something to think about. Those guys are now.
I didn't even know about that. I may actually try to do a story on that. Obviously, I have a. I mean, I think that's. Yeah. I don't think that all that many people. Who wrote the story that you read about it?
The story I got it from was greatesthockeylegends.com. Yep, so greatesthockeylegends.com. I'll send you a link. It's really, really good.
Yeah, no, I'll call Pritchard at the Hall of Fame, do a little piece on that. I think that's really kind of interesting. So
yeah, I'd like to see that continue.
But people will, even though the name won't be on the cup, you know that Gordie and Rocket Richard won it. You know that That's the main thing. I mean, Ted Lindsay was the first to raise the cup, and obviously he'll be off that band as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that when you're a player and you get the Stanley Cup for your day, that you're definitely looking for these names on the cup. You're looking for Gordie Howe. You're looking for these people.
No, that's right. That is right. I mean, you got that. And I wrote a story about Bork. Phil Bork, not Ray Bork, took the cup apart because he wanted to see what it was like, and you can sort of unscrew it and everything else. And when he was doing that, he etched his name in the inside of it. And then years later, he ran into J.J. Daigneault. I hope I have the story right now. I haven't told it in a while, but I certainly have written it. But J.J. Daigneault came up to him and said, I saw what you did. And he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, you put your name inside the cup. He goes, how do you know that? He says, because I did the exact same thing.
That's awesome.
So it's scratched on the inside that they've done. And Patrick Wow also took the cup apart because he wanted to see what was inside and all that kind of stuff. So now you never get the. I remember Pierre Lacroix distracted the cup keeper so that Waugh could take it out in his garage and take it apart. Now I think they're a little bit more careful with it.
Can you imagine that? What are you doing? Oh, I'm not doing anything. I'll see you in a little bit. Hey, check out that over there. That's pretty cool, isn't it? In the background, Patrick Waugh's walking away with the.
Yeah, he ran interference. Pierre Lacroix, by the way, was just he is. He's just a fascinating character. I mean, he was an agent when I first got to know him. Then he became a GM, and did a really good job of building that Avalanche team. Whenever I see him, he always comes up and we chat about the kind of the old times. But he was Wa's agent during all that. So
he's kind of the connection to the Quebec Nordiques, to me, for that team. There's still the connection. It's so cool that that there is still a connection to that team. Because I miss the Quebec Nordiques. Finally, the Pens have announced that Pascal Dupuis is done for the year, officially, with blood clots. And it's a shame Pascal Dupuis had such a crazy ass year. So I don't know, it's a tough year for him.
He's a good man too. Like I really enjoy talking to Pascal Dupuis. He's one of those guys that a lot of hockey players are fun to deal with, but he's particularly fun. He's just such a a polite guy, and he's a storyteller, and you like sitting next to his dressing stall and ask him about what's going on in the league.
Yeah, I've never had a chance to talk to him in length. I've talked to him after games and stuff like that, and he just seems super quality. And I remember one of the things you remember about the the very first 24/7 was they did a whole lot of Pascal Dupuis in that, and he really came across, with his family, he really came across as an interesting person, and obviously the recent stuff about his that's come out about he's just really interesting character, and I hope he's okay. He's not gonna be cleared to play hockey until June, so he's done for the season. But let's get to our NHL draft simulator today.
You can go ahead and run the NFL one too. I think
I'll run that one too. Yeah, sure, why not, right? All right, NHL trade. All right, here we go. Running the lottery today. The winner is. All right, hold on. I can make this nice and big. Keep that drum roll going. Sorry. This is the moment of every show that I love the most, when I am only the one who knows the NHL draft simulator is victor. Everybody else just sit back and wait. And here they come. It is the Arizona Coyotes. Arizona, known as the Copper State, or the Grand Canyon State. But yes, the Arizona Coyotes have won this. This have won this a couple times now.
Oh, multiple times, yeah.
Yes, we all agree that this is a team that could use this. That could use this probably more than most teams. And if the NHL was rigging this, which they aren't, would be one of the possibilities you would think about if you could pick a team there this to go to.
Well, that would be. I wrote something about this yesterday. Because we're coming upon the two most important games in the season for the Buffalo Sabres and the Arizona Coyotes, because they will play each other twice in the span of the next week. Buffalo is leading for 30th place by 3 points. Arizona was tied last night and lost the game to Vancouver in the last 2 minutes. And so I think they've lost 5 or 6 in a row at least. Depending on who wins those two games, it's who's going to finish in 30th place, who's going to finish in 29th, and I don't know. I think if Buffalo finishes last, they'll be happy. They'll get McDavid or Eichel. If Arizona finishes, if Buffalo finishes 29th and they lose the lottery and somebody below them wins it, they're not going to be happy, because I don't think they're going to get either one of those guys. They'll probably end up getting Hanifin or one of the other forwards. Yeah,
I mean, this is huge. I mean, I keep saying this, but it's this is really for Jack Eichel. The chances are you're not going to get the lottery. Somebody's going to get up and get McDavid that you're not counting on. I mean, we see that with the draft simulator.
The draft simulator has also been prophetic in the past about teams losing playoff positions, and I just ran it again just for fun, which I usually do after we've done, just ran it a couple times, and now I came up with this.
Let me guess, the Boston Bruins.
Check it out. Hold on. Yes.
Yeah.
The Bruins, who are still in the playoffs as of now, but somehow this happened before, and they were right. Remember with the Sharks? The Sharks were still in the playoffs and picked them, and then the Sharks fell out. So I don't know.
Wouldn't that be something though if that happened, and then the Bruins would take Boston University, Jack Eichel?
Can you imagine?
Number one.
And pardon me.
If they took Eichel number one.
Oh, well, they won't. But they're going to be the second pick because they're not going to win the lottery. So it's going to be somebody down that's going to win that.
I think so too. I think it's going to be surprising. I think we're going to have some kind of surprise, like.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, the odds say that it's not going to.
Yeah, and look at every time we run this, we see teams like Dallas, Philadelphia. All these teams.
Well, I mean, when you add up the odds of all the teams that aren't either Buffalo or Arizona, the chances are one of those teams is going to win that. So
right.
You know,
66. It's
Do you know the exact date of this? I was looking for this.
Saturday, April 18th.
it's usually a Monday. Yeah.
That's right. That's what
It's
they.
Saturday, April 18th. Is that the date?
Yes. At least that's what I heard.
I was Googling it, and I couldn't find anyone who said they speculated that was the date, but the NHL doesn't usually always announce this, right? I mean, I can't imagine it's not already in stone. So maybe is that the actual date?
I don't know for sure. I thought it was, for some reason, I had in my head it was the day before the playoffs, but
Usually it's the day right before the playoffs, right? Which
Yeah.
is like Monday or Tuesday,
yeah.
depending if the playoffs start on a Wednesday or Tuesday.
I mean, it would make sense because they've kept it as a singular event all these years, like
Right.
not not in the midst of or before playoff games. That's sort of like an NBA model. The NBA does the draft lottery at halftime in between some game, whereas the NHL has done it before the playoffs even start. So, I mean, it would make sense if it was on the Monday or Tuesday before the playoffs start, which usually start on a Wednesday. But
Right.
the date I heard was the 18th, which is the first Saturday of the playoffs. So, I mean, I'm sure they'll release that information and make it, and
Yeah, because I mean, it's obviously a big event. People are going to be people are very interested in this. This is by far the most hype about this thing. A couple years this has gone on, and people have really been, oh yeah, the draft lottery's tonight, but that's not going to be the case this year.
No, that's right. Yeah, this is big.
This is going to be a lot of fun. It's held in
Yeah.
New York, right? It's always held in New York.
I thought it was It's Toronto. Yeah,
Is it
I think it's
Toronto?
Toronto.
Yeah, TSN has broadcast it the last couple of years, so I'm assuming it's going to be Sportsnet now.
Yeah, and one last thing, because this was just texted to me as well. A rumor about Mark. We've heard the rumors about Mark Hunter and the Maple Leafs, and I hate to go into this at the end of the show, but this is something that I've heard more about in the last couple of days. And the idea here that Brendan Shanahan doesn't want to be the GM of the Maple Leafs. That's what I'm wondering about. That's what I wanted to ask you about, Kevin. Do you think he wants to be the GM, or do you think he likes being where he is now?
Well, it's a complicated management style to have the president and the GM, but if you're going to be one or the other, you'd rather have that.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
You're
because
far more secure as the president of the team.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I think he would be happy. I mean, you just need to get a GM in who's not going to fight you at everything you would like to do, and it's the best of both worlds. I mean, if you're president of the team, usually you can have a say in how the direction of the team is going, and yet, if things go bad, you can always fire the GM.
Yeah, no, that's what I think. It seems like a great, and also the fact I'm not saying it doesn't matter to me at all. It matters to a lot of people that he doesn't live in Toronto. Maybe as a GM, it would matter more.
Well,
I don't know.
I've heard. I mean, obviously, I've heard Hunter's name being mentioned ever since he got hired as director of player development. I think that's his title, and he's assistant GM as well. From what everything has been said, I mean, there's still a 50-50 possibility that Dave Nonis stays on. I mean, it's not likely. There are hints right now that Shanahan just wants to clear out everything that he possibly can, just wipe the slate clean as much as possible. But but Nonis has been involved in most of the trades. He's been carrying his weight in the organization. Hunter, from things I've learned, he's somebody he's a rink rat. He loves to go and scout and check out players, and I'm not sure if he really wants to do all the things that GMs also have to, that GMs do. I mean, besides that.
Well, yeah, but I mean that honestly is nowadays. That a lot of those duties are put off to other people too. Cap management. You can have a cap management guy. You can have a different guy.
Yeah, but I think Mike's right on that. I mean, when you're the president, you can, you don't have to do, all the grunt work. GMs do a lot of grunt work. They got to go see the farm team and all that. And maybe if you're president, you want to see it every once in a while, but not as much as the GM has to do it. And Brendan Shanahan's very tight with his family, and so there's a lot to be said for that.
That makes sense.
There's something to that.
Very much so. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today, guys. But thank you so much for doing this. We'll be back again tomorrow. And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Talk to you soon.